my pleasure to introduce Kerem Asfuroglu. Kerem is a lighting designer, a graphic artist, the founder of a company called Dark Source, which is a lighting design studio driven by social and environmental values. And Kerem has worked on a diverse range of projects, including Battersea Power Station in London, Covent Garden lighting Masterplans, Shakespeare's New Place, Medius House, and City Point. He's also won several awards for his work. And in the Dark Skies realm, he's also won the Dark Sky Defender Award from the IDA. He's done some fantastic graphic artwork for educational materials on dark skies and lighting. And he's currently working on a really interesting project at the moment on Pristine, a town in Wales. And he's preparing their Dark Sky Masterplan, which is of great interest to us here in Mayo, because we are hoping to do something, well, we are working on a lighting plan for Newport. So we're hoping to learn loads from yourself, Kerem. And I guess without further ado, welcome to Mayo Dark Sky Festival, and I'll hand over to you to continue.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been fantastic. You guys did an amazing job. I really enjoyed the diversity and the content that I've been seeing. And I got really jealous of the French guys having their Guinness, so I just went on and poured myself a glass of Irish whiskey. One of the qualities that's been introduced to me by my wife, who's from Dublin. Yeah, without taking it too long, I'm really excited about this event, and it's actually really, I'm very excited. It's great fun, to bring this important topic in. It's this kind of events really work as a hub for us people who are passionate about this subject to come together and connect. At these kind of times, I think we need these kind of gatherings way more now than ever. As per Georgia's lovely introduction, I'm a lighting designer. I've worked on various projects. I've been lucky enough to work on projects of small, large scales, national, international, which has actually contributed a lot to my perspective in terms of approach towards light as well. And in 2019, I founded Dark Source, which I'm sure as a lighting design practices name, it might sound a bit counterintuitive, but it's because light is a quality that we can produce, and darkness is a quality that we need to preserve. And sometimes actually all languages and cultures refer to the brightness aspect of light, where actually light is a composition of brightness and darkness. If one of those qualities overcome one another, we wouldn't be able to experience anything. I'm also a graphic artist, and I'm a member of Commission for Dark Skies based here in the UK, and we work with we campaign for the rights to the natural night sky, and work with communities or individuals, try to inform them about the importance and how they can achieve this. We've just in the early days of the lockdown, actually, this year, we've published our booklet called Blinded by the Light, which is an open source document if you guys are interested. It's got really nice information in it. It's a short, cute little booklet, and got some nice visual narrative to it. If you're interested, I'm sure Georgia will pass it on to you guys. So I bet this is the most qualified crowd that I'm talking to, because I often talk to people who don't really understand light pollution. But I think it's often important to do the textbook definition of what light pollution is, just to get it out of the way and kind of simplify it in terms. Light that is either bouncing off the horizontal plane or going upwards directly, which meets with air pollution, dust, clouds, or humidity, which manifests itself as a sky glow that blocks us from visually accessing the stars or the true night sky. And there are simple ways to tackle this, whether if it's the old technology that we're trying to control, like, you know, like sodium lamps or metal halides, and that are not dimmable products, then you know, we can use shields, baffles to direct the light where we need it. And if you're using modern technology like LEDs, then, you know, you can use optical control to have the amount of light where you need it. And dimmability comes into play, which is a massive quality that us lighting designers use in terms of creating a control intent in terms of scenarios and curfews and different, you know, lighting scenarios at different intensities. And one really important aspect of it is to utilize warmer color temperatures, because we know that cooler color temperatures tend to travel further in the atmosphere thanks to the Rayleigh scattering effect, but warmer color temperatures don't necessarily adhere to that law. But I like to take a bit of a different direction when I'm communicating light. I like to approach a bit more from the emotional and narrative-driven aspect of it. In 1994, there was an earthquake in Los Angeles, and at 4 a.m., the residents rushed outside trying to understand what was happening. And the power had gone out in town, and they've seen these lights in the night sky, and the 911 reports and you know, UFO sightings skyrocketed that day, because people thought that, you know, UFOs were invading, coming to get them. But what they were seeing for the first time was the Milky Way. That kind of gives you an idea in our modern context and times how detached we are from the natural sky. 1 to 2/3 of the population have never experienced a true night sky and maybe seen the stars in its full might. I'm also very interested in the history of illumination, and there's been some really nice presentations that touched upon that as well. You know, we sometimes forget, for a large chunk of our evolution, we had little control over fire and artificial lighting. And actually, surely we definitely must have seen like lightnings, you know, storms that result with fire, although we did not know how to produce or control of our own. But when fire came into play, it completely transformed our position in this on this planet. It came with a massive advantage, and it was not only about visibility. It was nutrition. It was offense. It was defense. It was exploration. It was social gatherings, and we could sit around the fire and see each other and share stories. Fire was never just about visibility. It's just you know, the modern society's luxury that we approach light as something that aids visibility. This probably majority of you might have heard of this. It's called the cosmic calendar. It's basically was popularized by one of my favorite science communicators, Carl Sagan. It's the idea is, if you take the entire lifespan of the universe and just basically implement it or superimpose it on an annual calendar, this is what you would get. Just basically January 1st being the Big Bang, and then 31st of December being actually the day that we actually come to play. So kind of, I like this diagram, which shows actually how insignificant we are in the grand scheme of things. In one of the presentations, it was very well said. It's insignificance in the sense of, it was Tyler Nordgren's presentation, that it actually inspires awe rather than, you know, making you feel down. And having that connection is often important, that we're not the center of the universe. And if we are to talk about our history of illumination, actually our control over the fire is that happened on the last day of the year at 8:30 p.m. And first municipal lighting maybe was actually 1664. It's just basically the very last second, the very last milliseconds of the last second of the year. And if it to bring us to the you know, midnight, finally we've actually invented our selfie stick and bathing in our, like, you know, cool bleached LED lighting and just basically decorated our urban landscapes with CCTVs. So it's interesting to look at the evolution of lighting. Is, you know, from the discovery of fire, it for a long time is actually combustion based, and it's actually mobile. We take it to places with us. Whether it's, you know, torch, candle, then, you know, in one of the presentations, it was interesting to hear that I've heard that rushlights were also used in Ireland as well. Similarly, it was used in ancient Greek, Roman, and also Mesopotamian, ancient Egyptian method. And up until gas, which is still combustion based or incandescence based, it's the way that we've actually done lighting was very similar. With gas, something changed. With gas, the intensity of the light was substantially enough that we were no longer having to look at the source. It was the lighting effect that we were looking at. And also with the gas came the grid. And then we hooked up to onto that grid, and which kind of, as we've moved on to the electricity, our connection with the grid even deepened. Then brings us into the popular topic of LEDs. LEDs are a very versatile tool, but it depends highly they're utilized. Their color consistency, dimmability, efficiency, lamp life, there's a lot to praise about LEDs, but there's a lot to be concerned about LEDs as well, because all LEDs are driven from blue LED, essentially with the phosphor coating, the color is actually been additively changed later on. We still have a peak in the blue end of the spectrum. It's getting better. We're getting better at this technology. Maybe one day we can completely eradicate that blue end of the spectrum. There's also a question of from electricity to electronic. Our transition happened so fast. Maybe our recycling regime and understanding and ethics didn't really catch up with it neither. With the LEDs also, you know, the production methods are so now widely established that the production cost is really cheap. That results with maybe one old source being replaced with 2 or 3 LED sources, which is another concern, growing concern that we have. It's sometimes it's awe-inspiring, and it's unbelievable that we've, as a society, our control over this planet and control over light came to a state that if you were an alien just observing this planet, the first plain sight observation that you would do is that this planet holds intelligent life, because there is an artificial resistance to the nightscape in the dark hemisphere of this pale blue dot. Needless to say, I mean, it's yes, it's very it deserves praise about, you know, the control over the light, but also there's a downside to our transgression and excessive use of it. But many of these talks, many of you already know also the light comes at a cost, and that's not only about electricity, that's not only about economy. It comes at the cost of, as an impact on the biodiversity, our surroundings, the environment, and ourselves as well. And we should all be clued up about this. One other really interesting thing that I find is our culture with light is at the edge of a transformation into something else. As we said, we've always looked at fire as a jumble of a package of different qualities. Then visibility shifted into, you know, being a separate quality. But now also the light is a tool that is expected to deliver on the visual communication aspect as well, which I'll expand on in a second. At no point in our history had we consumed this much light, had we ever subjected ourselves to this much light. So we have to always remind ourselves that there is an uncapped use on terms of how much light we consume based on our 24/7 lifestyle. And, you know, Another important topic to talk about in the urban context, this conversation is often being seen as for some reason, it's a small community, or it's seen as a subject for rural areas. We should bring this conversation to the big cities, because they are the mass producers of light pollution. It's not the small communities often. And vertical illumination is a big part of this. And there was something once Georgia said, that the light is actually sometimes seen as the sign of prosperity. Yes, and it's also used as the sign of power as well. And it's the visual language to impress. But within the urban context, when we have all these private developments busy with doing what they want to do to their buildings, we don't have a grand vision about how we want to actually experience our nightscape in our surroundings. And there's always this element of constant visual engagement and communication with the ads and LED screens and facades, which is a growing concern as well. So that's something that actually keeps me awake at night sometimes. I'm quite concerned about what master will the light will serve in the future. Is it brands, marketing, visual communication? And when this cacophony, will there be a coherence? Will there be any harmony, which we don't see? It's interesting that city planners or planning offices, architects, we all have access to information. For example, we would know if you want to gather that information, you would know what London's or Dubai's skyline will look like in 2030, or even what Dublin's skyline will look like, because you would be able to, there'd be a consensus system that actually shows you all that information. But when it comes to our nightscape and lighting, even though that information is available, nobody's actually looked into actually piecing it together to have a grand vision. And that's an important question that we should be asking to ourselves. And we don't want to be living in a dystopian sci-fi where light is constantly used to tease, to engage. Light has way more important purposes to deliver on. But this was not always the way that we experienced. Up until 17th century, we had a very agricultural existence, defined by the harvest of the seasons and run by social and political elite. Majority of us were, working people, and the way that people used to experience, particularly in the north and western countries, is somebody else actually said in their presentation, it was very inefficient to be out there at night because you could hurt yourself. Yeah, that was the Halloween special presentation. That was lovely. And therefore, people actually, we had a concept called second sleep. So you would rest the bed at the early evening time and sleep for 4 or 5 hours, then wake up maybe for an hour or two, use that time for reading, self-reflection, contemplation, sex, whatever, prayer, and then rest the bed for another 4 or 5 hours. And with the Industrial Revolution, what happened is the night turned into day way more, and the workshops and the ateliers than anywhere else. And that kind of shifted and changed our way of living as well. And those two pieces of sleeping slots joined into one block of sleeping pattern. And those beautiful nights where we actually looked and admired the night, through night from our window, changed into now night is trying to ingress into our personal spaces, and we're constantly in a battle to keep it out. And light nuisance is a serious issue as well, which there are not many countries actually have any legislation. Even I have to say, UK hasn't been that great, but there's progress. We see there's an all parliamentary group talk that is happening, and there's a group seriously concerned about light pollution. Hopefully, if there's any legislation to not ban people but incentivize people to actually move forward, we're looking forward to, we're excited about the prospect of that. We only know about the French law in 2018 that actually has been a great guidance in the sense of light planning. So we had a very we've been inspired by the night sky in, like, you know, for centuries. And then we had a very great idea. And then, you know, we hooked up onto that idea, which happens to be the grid and our excessive way of living and consuming. And, you know, maybe we are gone a bit far, and maybe there's repercussions that will be inflicted on us. And this is not only about lighting, this is about, you know, carbon emissions, this is about global warming. Just take this as a diagram of progression into something quite dangerous. And sometimes people, when these things called into question, the first argument people bring onto the play is security. And we go and say, there's actually no solid evidence that that proves that adding more light into the nightscape actually deters crime. And actually, if anything, light means opportunity. And if you're lighting your space like a birthday cake, surely burglar will need to actually see where they're going, and, you know, they'll be able to actually understand how they can break into a place. So it's often not really well understood that, like, you know, more light is actually brings you more danger. And also in terms of contrast, you may not be able to see, because the darker areas will, you know, turn into black, you know, blackout points where you won't be able to see what's going on. So harsher light actually worsens the contrast. But the agreeable and the important arguments are, you know, here in UK alone, we're spending £1 billion just to light the night sky and just basically cause light pollution. 6% of the CO2 emissions worldwide can be attributed to light. 20% of the electricity worldwide use can be attributed to light. These are important topics. And this is a photo of Bath. Actually, this photo shows something that is the neighboring town that is actually, there's the sport facilities in the neighboring town that is causing this issue. It's not actually even this community's problem. And when it comes into, light pollution comes into play, 20 kilometers is nothing. So it may not be you. You might be a very astute and, you know, very thoughtful community, but you might be actually getting this problem given to you by your neighbor or the neighboring town. Another argument is we should care about the nighttime character and atmosphere within our built environment. This is an example of a town in Wales where actually, you know, the consistency, the language of the light, the human scale approach, and, you know, and the warmth of the light really serves that heritage quality well. And we don't often need too much light to actually go around. Another important argument is, thanks to, you know, the IDA's achievements and many other anti-light pollution movement and campaigners, these places create a destination. This is why we have met in this festival talking to each other, because, you know, we want to share our experience and thoughts with people who are kindred and like-minded. And this also attributes to the nighttime economy, and also encourages people to go out there, which we've seen from Tyler Nordgren's presentation as well. And there was another presentation about the lesser horseshoe bats, which is a species that is quite an important species that it happens to be in Pristine in Wales, which I'll be expanding on in a second as well. We are understanding in this decade the repercussions of light pollution on pollinators, and we're understanding how inequality creates, where some species can actually come to light very easily and some of them which can't, and the ones that can come to the lights and have a open buffet breakfast with moths and flies, whilst the other species who evolutionary way that they can never get near to lights are completely disadvantaged. So our use of light is not only affecting us, is also has a serious dramatic impact on species around us. So this is Pristine Dark Sky Masterplan. I'm really excited to be involved in this project. Pristine is located in Wales. I'll show it in the map in a second. It's got about 2,700 to 3,000 people population, including Norton. We've been working with the town council. They've been absolutely amazing, and we've been, mustering up the energy and crowd to actually, the community is heavily pushing forward for this. So I'm really excited about the prospect of bringing this project to life. I think it will be 2022, early 22, when it will be actually finished. We're talking about town-wide replacing all light fittings. So this is the light pollution map of England and Wales. As you can see from this map, it's too late for saving London's soul. It's gone. And all the big towns, Manchester, Birmingham, you can see the pattern. So what makes it important for my job as a lighting designer is every victory counts. And because when you see the severity of the situation, every little counts. But when you look at the Wales, and you can see how dark it is, which I also think Ireland is similarly, can be actually categorized in that as well. I've been lucky enough to be into Mayo, Galway, Clare, and so Pristine is located in Wales, but just between England and Wales at the border. And when you look at that night sky map, there's absolutely no reason why Pristine shouldn't have true, perfect night sky. Wales, as you know, is one of the world champions when it comes to the protected dark skies. It's got 18% of its land mass is actually under protected dark skies, which there's no reason why Ireland cannot achieve it if there was more applications. So we need to see that kind of encouragement for other communities as well. When you look at the truly dark sky sites, it's actually sandwiched between really truly dark sky areas. And then you wonder why the light pollution happens to be an issue here. So this is Pristine this is a map that has been pulled out of a satellite image. It's a, stereotypical cute little Welsh town, really lush, very beautiful. It's been shaped by two artery, one vehicular, one pedestrian access, one high street and one main road. And while we're doing this, we're also asking ourselves, besides the street engineering modification, is there an opportunity to do something else? This is we're working on legibility and wayfinding diagram, trying to understand what are the important vistas, which buildings as landmarks can play an important role if we wanted to judiciously eliminate them. So we don't only replace the light fittings, so we also enhance the nighttime character and ambience while we're doing that as well. So based on our brightness readings and lux level readings, so it's both the sky and the ground, our values actually matched easily in terms of defining where the problematic areas are. So our estimation is if you are to change all these red and yellow dots to green, then we should be able to achieve dark sky community status. And as you know, community status is a bit different because it's a town and it needs to still function and perform. It's not like having a park and reserve. So safety and the level of visibility is an important topic. So this is the current lighting situation in the town. And as you can see that the lighting intensity and color temperature is very intermittent and a bit all over the place. There are some qualities to it that they have some streets that are actually switched off and it's been working just fine. So that's what I find it's a power in actually small communities because standards are often just guidelines, which people feel comfortable by ticking those boxes in mostly urban context. But when it comes to rural areas or when it comes to small communities, if the community is happy and if the municipality approves that, there is absolutely no force over them and forcing them to light their streets at all times. If everybody's on board with it, if everybody's on the same page, that's it. So you don't have to necessarily follow every single standard that is imposed upon you. this is what we're trying to achieve. Could we actually have a bit more homogeneous and a bit more warmer approach that emanates from the town center, just basically grows from the center outwards, and mostly utilize warmer color temperatures with the latest LED optic technology and dimming technology. While we're looking at this also, the typology of lighting is so interesting that it's one of the reasons why it feels like a prison yard is because everything is at 9 meters shining down on you. There's nothing that is human scale, which we will also try to bring that datum line a little bit down if we can. And it's highly depending on the funds that we will have available at the time. So this is a photo from the town. These are actually lovely Rochester lanterns from a manufacturer called SUG. And, you know, they used to be a gas lantern. They've been retrofitted with LEDs, but they're so blindingly glary. And have a look at the amount of lighting that is spilled onto residential facades. And look at the uniformity of lighting that is actually killing the ambiance and atmosphere, because it just looks like a dully lit, you know, like a sports arena. And it's actually a very odd lighting effect to expect from such beautiful heritage lanterns in such a beautiful historic context. So this is the assembly room. This is the bang on just the junction, the main artery cross section of the town. And when this building plays such an important role on all vistas, and it's one of the oldest piece of architecture, landmark architecture within the space. And you can see how the lighting is actually rendering it in such a way that it's a hodgepodge of illumination, that the clock tower is completely split, and there's a lot of uncontrolled vertical illumination. And we're also looking at, could we do something else with the architectural lighting and assist this a bit further? Because what we don't want to do is, what we would like to aim for is also create a sense of local pride and joy by just basically giving something with lighting rather than taking it all away. So this is the situation what we have currently, and we're hoping to, you know, achieve this, hopefully, if we can. You know, pardon the artistic license taken in creating the Milky Way. I don't know if you can deliver in such a great quality Milky Way, but we will definitely endeavor for it. And it's really excited about this. And, you know, it's about creating a pleasant experience with light rather than light being something that is bestowed upon you, or absence of it should be a problem for you. There's a balance to be found, definitely, in terms of using the language of light. Needless to say, the amount of local heroes and the community, it's a very, very, very important topic when it comes to these kind of movement. We need campaigners, we need supporters, we need to also be the people who create this fertile environment for these conversations, encouragement. So the town council, the local community, and then which led to the county council, they've been very supportive of this project, and they're very, everybody's really interested in the outcome of it. And hopefully, if this becomes a success, that might be a model for the county council to roll out in other areas as well. But what I really like about, you know, those kind of projects is working with the community directly and trying to achieve what people are all striving for. Until recently, our ancestors experienced this night sky, you know, brimming with stars, which inspired art, philosophy, religion, science. It would be such a shame to not having any access to it. And light pollution, as our director at CFDS, Bob Mizon, says, is nobody's fault. It's something that happened and happens. We come to this point not willingly or knowingly. We just found this is because we were not paying attention, and all these layers can now come together to a level that actually becomes a threat for us, because we need everybody to be able to access the night sky and get inspired by it. And, you know, our future and, you know, perseverance lies out there, and our growing interest down here is a massive threat to all of us as a society. Just think about this: if the young Galileo or Kepler and Copernicus had to you know, I don't know, 5 hours drive out of the towns that they were in to observe the night sky, to be able to make the observations they had. Imagine the geniuses that we're missing out on just by creating codes and light pollution in our urban context these days. Unfortunately, now we came to a state where the constellations that we experience in our nightscapes are our glowing, brightly glowing and twinkling cities, and we should all just basically do our part in you know, broadcasting the importance of night sky for all of us, and basically collectively jump together further than we individually can. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Kerem. That was absolutely excellent. I've got so many questions to ask you, but I know other people have too, so I'm going to go straight into the Q&A. I'll just check on our time. We're good on time. Yeah, that was fantastic. I love the graphics, and the information that you have is just fantastic. So let's just go into the questions here. Okay, firstly, we have Colin Doyle is asking, what is the best type of lights for a campsite to use to see the night sky, and also have safe access to visit the toilet block at night?
I think using the red colored lights that are rich in more closer to the infrared spectrum of the light. So basically red lights, you will find it in any shop that, or any online shop that sells, like, you know, astronomer friendly lighting. That would be the best way for it, I think. It because red spectrum is, we know it's sky friendly, it's bat friendly, but you know, red also, you know, tends to, when the spectrum shifts that far onto that end, some people, for camping purposes, if they're not going to do astronomical observation and stuff, some people may not like that. So it's okay to go with warm torches. 2200 Kelvin is easily can be found. You know, any kind of torches, flashlights, any equipment that they're used to, they can just basically take those kind of stuff that just on the warmer end would help massively, I think.
Yeah, so warmer first. I do think it's a little more difficult for us to buy them here. I know in Ireland I found it quite tricky to find warm lanterns, so we'll keep an eye out on that, and getting sources is part of the solution for us.
Also know that it's an interesting point that you raised. It's also when you have enough people that who's interested in the product. For example, the example of Pristine, 2200K lanterns are not easy to find. Not many manufacturers produce that. That's because cooler color temperatures tend to be slightly 5 to 10% more efficient. This is why majority of the manufacturers push out, you know, cooler color temperatures. So we had to, you know, been very cheeky and demanding, and, like, you know, asking from manufacturers that they had to produce 2200 for our lighting test. So we have a lighting test scheduled in that town, and we'll basically experiment and show different color temperatures to get the community on board and familiarized, because sometimes those numbers can be quite confusing. It doesn't mean anything to people, but when they see it, they get it.
Yeah. Okay, that'll be interesting to see the results as it goes. Okay, Charles, he says, unless it's very cloudy, for the majority of nights, there is sufficient light to see. True. Why is there a fundamental fear of the dark? Could we start to educate children and adults not to be frightened at night? There's a question.
Yeah, it's a very nice cultural question. I think education is very important. I think you're right. And that's something that we're also often thinking about, how we can actually reach out to people at an early age. But yes, although I have to sometimes admit there were reasons why we got scared of the darkness, because darkness was not really our friend for a large chunk of our history. Because, like, you know, the predators, we were not apex predator, we're not, and, you know, our vision at night is not that fantastic. So a puma could jump onto you at any time and kill you. And hence the reason I think in our growing societies, actually, we associated safety with more light. But the problem is, that's not that it's not true. It's just we went too excessive on one end of the spectrum. This much light is definitely not good for anybody. But I would definitely concur with this sentiment. I think, share that knowledge and pass it on to your, next generation. I find, generally country like rural or let's say West Coast Ireland is very, very well attuned to that importance. And it's kind of like, in mostly, I'd say, like in Celtic, culture, it's a very well embedded quality that darkness has substance, that is not something that is just absence of light, or it's not zero. It's got character. There's a romantic quality to it as much as, there's a philosophical quality to it as well.
Very true. I think we do have that in the West. And just as an example, I usually quote my mother, who moved from Mayo to London and said she was never afraid of the dark until she moved to the bright lights of London. And I think we can equate with that, with the shadows that are created by bright lights, which you don't have in the country.
It's very interesting. I actually, me and my wife, we brought my mum. I'm Turkish. She came from South Mediterranean coast of Turkey to. We went on a road journey on the West Coast. She loved it. She loved the nature, and she loved people and the culture. But she was very, very threatened by the rural night, and we were just like, what are you fearing? Literally the only thing that can kill you are cows in this town.
Great. Another one here, we have Jed Dowling, who says he was, similar question, he was walking through Hatton Garden in London last year and noticed the lighting was reminiscent of the old lantern style lights, similar to gas lights, but with LED technology. This allowed us to view the stars in the middle of one of the most densely populated cities in Europe. Is this the simple solution?
Yes and no. This is a question that comes to us a lot. Is there a certified product? Is there there are lots of products. There's lots of ways of achieving this, but there's not one rule that fits them all. And I definitely agree that, in heritage and historic context, utilizing those lanterns wherever it's suitable would actually add great value and quality to the experience of these spaces. Now even there are companies that even replicate the gas mantles, so you actually see the source. Because what happened with LEDs is we are now also getting used to not seeing the source, which is very interesting because the source is too bright. But when you see actually the mantles, and when they're not too bright, actually you have a connection to, it's more an evolutionary connection. Oh, I see the source and I see where the light is coming from. It's not too harsh, it's very soft and subtle. I think that's always a question that comes, what light are you suggesting? My experience is, because I'm a designer, so every project that I work on is a custom project, and I approach them in a very custom manner. And all the lights are always different depending on the character, quality, and the ambition of the project.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Just moving on to Terry Mosley here. He's asking, the night picture of the village in your plan has some areas with light shining upward, but the roundabout only has light shining down. He's asking, correct, is that newer controlled lighting? Good question.
That's not the new one yet. We haven't finished the project, so we are doing the lighting tests in January 2021. We'll have more stuff to share at that time. But he's got a good observation. They were shining down, yes, but they were also shining all the way across the residence facades as well. But also that was one slide where we were also talking about this kind of intermittent vertical lighting shouldn't be acceptable as well, because vertical lighting plays a very important role in creating safe spaces. You don't need to be bathing in light to feel secure. It's mostly about identifying your periphery, and the perimeter helps. So you can be in zero lux, no light whatsoever, but if you can see where you're heading to, and if you can identify your periphery, you will feel safe. And that sense of safety is a very important subject, which standards often don't really take into consideration. In that image, what we're trying to do is even though they are downlighting, yes, but is there something more we can add to actually improve the visual experience of that building, because it's been currently, torn into two pieces thanks to one side being light and one side being dark.
The contrast. Okay, great. We have Mohammed Khan has asked, what is the best way to collect light pollution data and what medium to use? Any suggestions?
That's a very good question. There are some SQM readers. Basically, it's the sky brightness luminance readers. In comparison to industrial level brightness luminance readers, they are actually very sensitive towards very little light as well. And what people usually do is they take a reading every often. You just keep doing it, whether it's cloudy day, whether it's a very clear night, and just basically point the sky reader upwards and take a measurement and write it down. And then you can put that data on, there are lots of open source websites that you can input that data. If you just basically type in light pollution map, some would call, I think Christopher Kiba of IGZ is like in Berlin, who's also
Loss of the Night, I think is.
Loss of the Night, yeah. So there are lots of platforms out there, open source, accessible, where you can actually check the light pollution in the area and also put data. And one important thing, I think it's Sibylla Schreier showed it to us recently. That was very interesting, that you can also check the trend of lighting. So she was showing us the trend of Madrid, that the light pollution actually started decreasing, which was very interesting to see. So it's not all doom and gloom. There's some communities that are actually, even densely populated urban areas, are achieving something.
I think even the awareness and the fact that people are asking how to collect light pollution data as an indication that the awareness is changing, and hopefully the curve will be producing maps like Sibyl's in future. And we might pop a few sources in the chat at the end here, because there are a few sources that we're aware of for collecting data. It's really important to get people doing citizen science for this. Okay.
And on that, the Blinded by Light booklet, you will see that there is a very simple method of checking the sky quality with your own eyes, but it's also, just treat that as not like science, in the sense of that it's not a numerical value where you find the Polaris, and it gives you kind of idea about which stars you can identify with your naked eye, but also take it with a pinch of salt, in the sense of that, because our perception is very different per person, and also as you get older, your eye dilates less. So it's just a generic rule that we've put into that booklet to give people an idea about how, based on their own eyes, visually measure the sky brightness if they wanted to. But the precise way of doing it is using a luminance sky brightness meter.
Great. Okay, and I can't recommend that booklet enough. I know Bob Misen, who is the author, is on the chat as well here. So there's yourself from the graphic design, and Bob has put a link up for people to get that. So Blinded by the Light, it's a fantastic publication and so nicely illustrated. Right, I might take one more question here, and then we'll have I have another little poll, and then I'll read a few comments for you, Kerem, and then we'll set you free. But there's loads of questions coming in. Jim Kiernan is asking, has the expected reduction in electricity costs and CO2 emission been calculated for Pristine project?
Very good question. As we are speaking, we're doing that. Well, I was estimating way higher saving, but Pristine, being a rural Welsh town, and actually power-wise, I don't want to give a wrong figure, but it was looking like with the new introduction of LED, we might be able to save up to £10,000. I was hoping for, I don't know, 50 grand, but still, I mean, it's not insignificant. But I don't want to give a false clue yet, but we are at the moment calculating all that to see how we can decrease. We're also gathering, referring to the question before, gathering data is very important. Gather your data so you can, when you achieve something, you can actually extrapolate and compare that information. So we're in the process of gathering all the data before we implement the project.
Well, I'm going to ask one very simple question on that for gathering data. It's one that we ask a lot, is can you see the Milky Way from your place of residence? So I'm going to launch that poll and have a look at the other comments, Kerem. So let's that up and let people tell us yes or no, and I'll check the chat here as well. So just while they're voting, I'll read a few.
My answer's easy, straightforward. No.
No. No. Okay, we've got just a few random comments here. Brian Wilson, a fantastic visual and verbal presentation, Kerem. Education is a key component in the fight against light pollution. Thank you. Thank you, Brian, for that.
Thank you.
Laura Harrison, there are some great children's books that give positive experience of darkness. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm in liberty to say at the moment, but Bob is actually working on a similar booklet as well.
No, you're not at liberty to say.
I've given that away now. He has to finalize it now.
Yeah, no, great stuff. We'll look out for that. So Bob, you might pop some information as soon as it's available, and then we can share it on our site. So we have another Charles, there are existing smartphone apps, that's true, that help you take light pollution measurements. Deirdre Hopkins, thank you, Bob and Kerem. Mags has a comment. I'm just scrolling up to see what it is because I can see people commenting on it.
Gerard is asking what Irish whiskey you're drinking. Well, Gerard,
he's not getting it.
You'll be surprised to know that actually, thanks to my wife, I mean, I'm really well introduced into whiskey world. So I'm actually treating myself with some Redbreast.
Very nice. Good choice.
Thank you.
That's good. So just having it quickly. I know.
Great choice.
Max had put Max, do you mind popping your question in again so I can see it? It's somewhere in the middle of a chat, and I know it was a good point. And while you do that, I'll just have a look at the poll, and there we have it. So let's share the results. Okay. So I guess we don't know exactly where everyone is, but it's always interesting to remind people, to look out the back door and see what they can see. And if they can't see the stars, then why not? And maybe that's an opportune time to raise this with the local county council. And I know we have some of our own county council on the line here. So thank you to them for supporting Mayo Dark Skies. And we look forward to further improvements in our lighting as time goes on. Well, just 1 second. Meg said she made a couple of comments, making dark sky friendly a social norm. That was it. Okay, so that's a very good point. Yeah. So I think that is it, to get socially accepted.
Social quality of life is to improve quality of life is what we're trying to angle for. We're not trying to disadvantage anybody. Nobody would like that. And,
no, exactly. And we're not anti-light either. And as Bob, just to give Bob the final word here, he says, I see the Milky Way only when the street lights go off at 12, but at least your street lights do go off at 12, whereas many of them, certainly here, don't at the moment. So that's another good point.
Curfews are very important and very helpful. I don't know if you guys seen that Chris's study in Arizona that came out. It was all over the news.
Yes.
It shows you the clear difference between the dimming regime and non-dimming regime, and it's light years apart in terms of impact, and people couldn't tell the difference. That's what's interesting.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, on that note, I'm afraid we're just running out of time. So as I said, we could go on, but thank you so much. We'll feed back more of these comments to you, Kerem, and if you don't mind, if there are other questions that we could pop into you by email and maybe share them with our audience here.
Thank you, Georgia, and thank you everybody who's been involved with this lovely organization. I truly enjoyed it, and well done to you guys. Actually, made our day in this really long winter COVID night, and we're delighted that you keep that tradition alive. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Well, like we say, maybe next time we'll have you here in person to give a presentation. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.